The sun hung straight over the small town of Red Hollow, a burning coin nailed to a white sky. Heat shimmered off the rooftops, the air thick enough to choke a man if he breathed too deep. Down the empty main street, the only sound was the low moan of wind dragging dust across wooden boards. Then came the echo of boots, slow, heavy, certain. Eli Turner walked the center of that street like a ghost that had finally found its way home. His hat's brim-shadowed eyes that had seen too much and forgiven too little. A long duster coat fluttered at his knees, brushing against the grit. His hand hovered close to the worn handle of his revolver. At the far end of the street, another man stepped out from the saloon. Cal Briggs, taller, broader, the kind of man whose silence could command a room. The wind caught the edge of his black coat, revealing the glint of his own Colt .45, polished and deadly. The townsfolk had already cleared the street. Some watched from behind curtains, others from the cracks between shutters. They knew better than to interfere. The sheriff had ridden out 3 days ago. Smart man, maybe the smartest of them all. Eli stopped, 20 paces between them. Cal's eyes met his across the dust. No words yet. Just that silent understanding between two men who'd been running from the same moment for 10 long years. "You came back," Cal said finally. Voice rough, low like the growl of a dying storm. "Never really left," Eli replied. Cal's lip twitched, something between a sneer and a smile. "You should have stayed gone, Turner." Eli's eyes narrowed. "You took everything I had, Cal, my land, my name." "And Sarah," he stopped, jaw tightening. The name alone was enough to pull the breath from his chest. "She made her choice," Cal cut in. "You were gone too long. Man can't wait forever." A long silence. The wind picked up again, swirling between them like a restless ghost. Eli's eyes didn't move. "A man can wait," he said softly. "A coward can't." The words hit like a gunshot. Inside the Golden Spur saloon, glasses trembled. A young boy peered through the shutters, breath held tight in his chest. He'd heard stories of men like these, legends carved into the bones of the frontier. But seeing them now, standing under the cruel sun, he realized legends bled just like everyone else. Cal adjusted his hat, eyes dark beneath the brim. "You really want this to end here?" "It started here," Eli answered. "Best we finish it proper." The church bell at the far end of town struck 12. The sound rolled down the street slow and hollow, like the voice of God himself. Eli's thumb brushed the hammer of his Colt. Cal's fingers twitched near the grip. For one stretched second, time folded. The wind stilled. Even the flies hovering in the heat seemed to hang in place. Then, the bell rang again. Both men moved. The explosion of gunfire tore through the silence. The echo roared between buildings, scattering pigeons and sending glass to the ground. One figure staggered, another stayed still. The dust cloud swallowed everything. When it cleared, Cal Briggs stood with smoke curling from his gun. Across the street, Eli was on one knee, one hand gripping his stomach, blood dark against the tan of his coat. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't move. Red Hollow had seen enough death to know that no one ever really won a duel. Cal's face was stone as he approached, revolver steady. "Told you," he muttered. "You should have stayed gone." Eli coughed, the sound wet, sharp. "You think this is done?" Cal frowned. "She knows," Eli whispered. "She found out what you did." Cal froze. "She's the one who sent for me." The color drained from Cal's face. The wind howled through the street again, carrying with it the smell of gunpowder, sweat, and the first touch of fear. Eli grinned through blood. "This ain't over, Briggs." "Not yet." Cal's eyes flickered, confusion shadowing the cold. Behind him, the townsfolk began to murmur. Somewhere a woman's voice screamed his name from the distance. Sharp. Terrified, familiar. Cal turned his head toward the sound. Eli's gun came up, slow, shaking but steady enough. The shot cracked the sky. The shot cracked the sky. The echo of the last gunshot still drifted through Red Hollow long after the smoke cleared. The street lay silent, dust settling like the aftermath of a storm. Cal Briggs stood frozen, gun limp in his hand, eyes locked on Eli Turner's motionless form. But Eli wasn't dead. Not yet. He stirred, blood seeping through his coat, breath ragged but alive. The crowd, cautious and whispering, crept from doorways, eyes wide with disbelief. Cal backed away a step, chest heaving as the weight of what Eli said began to root deep inside him. She's the one who sent for me. That sentence gnawed at him like a slow fever. Sarah, his wife, had called Eli Turner back from the grave of the past. He turned as a voice cracked through the heat. "Cal!" Sarah Briggs came running down the street, skirts lifting dust with every desperate stride. Her auburn hair caught the light. Her face was pale as chalk. In her hand she clutched something small, crumpled paper, maybe a letter. She dropped to Eli's side before Cal could reach her. "Eli," she whispered, pressing trembling hands to his wound. "I told you not to come here." Eli's eyes fluttered open. "Didn't have a choice. Not after what you wrote." Cal's boots crunched closer. "What letter?" Sarah looked up at him, tears streaking her face. "Don't, Cal, not now." He crouched beside them, voice rough. "What did you tell him, Sarah?" Eli coughed a dry, bitter sound. "She told me the truth, Cal, about what happened that night at Miller's Crossing." Cal froze, the name hit like a hammer. Miller's Crossing. The night a ranch burned, 2 men died, and Eli Turner vanished into the wild. For years, Cal had carried that silence like a buried bullet. "Don't," Cal growled. "You don't know what you're talking about." Eli's hand shot out, gripping Cal's coat, dragging him close. "You set that fire, Cal. You killed old man Miller to take his land. Then you blamed me for it. You knew I'd hang if I stayed." The crowd gasped. Cal's face hardened. "You think anyone will believe a dying outlaw over me? I built this town. I fed these people." Sarah rose to her feet, eyes blazing. "No, Cal, you built it on ashes. You let him burn for your greed." Her voice cracked the silence like thunder. Cal's jaw tightened. For the first time, his confidence faltered. The truth once whispered spread like fire through dry grass. The faces around them shifted from fear to disbelief, from disbelief to quiet hatred. A shadow fell across the sheriff's office door. Deputy Lyle, a thin, wiry man who'd seen too much of both of them, stepped forward, hand resting near his holster. "You best come with me, Cal," he said softly. "Let's sort this before it gets worse." Cal glanced around, eyes darting from face to face. The heat pressed down, heavy as judgment. Then he holstered his gun slowly and turned away. "You people got short memories," he muttered. "This town wouldn't even exist without me." He stalked off, boots echoing down the boardwalk. The crowd parted like water around him, no one daring to stop him, but no one looking away either. Sarah knelt again beside Eli, pressing cloth to his wound. "You're going to live," she whispered. "You have to." Eli smiled faintly. "Always did have a stubborn streak, Sarah. I'm sending for the doctor." "Don't bother," he said, breath weak but steady. "He'll just tell me what I already know." Sarah shook her head fiercely. "You can't die. Not after all this. Not before he pays." Eli's eyes drifted shut, but his hand caught hers. "Then make sure he does." That night, Red Hollow didn't sleep. Rumors ran wild through the saloon. Whispers of the letter, of the fire, of Sarah's tears. Men who once drank with Cal now watched him with quiet suspicion. In his house on the hill, Cal sat in the dark, a bottle untouched beside him. The letter Sarah had written spread open on the table. "You can't hide from what you did. Cal, Eli deserves the truth." He stared at the words until they blurred. His hand trembled. Outside, the wind howled against the shutters like a warning from the desert. He thought of Sarah's eyes, how they used to look at him before guilt crept into her heart. He thought of Eli, bleeding but alive, lying in the sheriff's office under guard. Cal pushed up from the table, rage burning in his chest. "He's not taking her from me again," he whispered. He strapped on his gun belt. The night bled toward dawn. Dust drifted across the town like ghosts in the half-light. Cal Briggs rode down from his house, his horse's hooves striking sparks on the stone. He didn't care who saw him now. At the jail, Deputy Lyle dozed in a chair by the door. Cal stepped inside quietly, revolver drawn. Eli lay on the cot, pale but awake. His eyes met Cal's, calm, resigned. Took you long enough, Cal's jaw clenched. You ruined everything. Eli gave a faint laugh. No, Cal, you did that all by yourself. Cal hesitated. For the briefest second, the weight of 10 years pressed on him. Brotherhood turned to betrayal, friendship drowned in fire. Then he raised the gun. Before he could pull the trigger, a voice rang out behind him. Don't. Sarah stood in the doorway, holding Lyle's shotgun, hands shaking but eyes fierce. End this now, Cal. He turned slowly, staring at her as if seeing her for the first time. You'd point that thing at me? I'd use it, she said. For a long moment, none of them moved. Then Cal lowered his gun slightly, eyes softening just enough to whisper, I never meant for it to go this way. Neither did I, Sarah said. The shotgun fired, Cal staggered backward, shock etched across his face. Blood spread across his chest like spilled ink. He fell to his knees, eyes fixed on Sarah as if still searching for forgiveness. She dropped the gun, tears blurring her vision. I loved you once, she whispered. But you left me no choice. Cal hit the floor. The room filled with silence. Outside, dawn broke over Red Hollow, turning the dust to gold. Eli turned his face toward the light. Guess that's the end of it. Sarah sank beside him, taking his hand. No, she said softly. It's the start of something better. He smiled faintly. We'll see about that. We'll see about that. Morning came slow to Red Hollow, painting the desert in gold and grief. The gunfire from the night before still echoed in the bones of the town. People moved quietly, like they were afraid of waking ghosts. By sunrise, the word had spread from the saloon to the blacksmith shop. Cal Briggs was dead. Some said Sarah pulled the trigger without blinking. Others said Cal forced her hand. But no one really wanted to know the truth. Red Hollow had a way of burying things: men, memories, mistakes. Inside the small jailhouse, Eli Turner stirred awake. His wound had been cleaned. The bleeding slowed, though every breath still came with a price. The light filtered through the bars, warm against his face. He blinked toward the open door where Sarah sat, staring at nothing. "You been sitting there all night?" he asked softly. Sarah turned, her eyes shadowed but steady. "Didn't feel right going home." Eli nodded. "Home's a hard thing to go back to after all this." A silence stretched between them, filled with dust motes and the faint creak of the windmill outside. "You should rest," she said. He smiled faintly. "You sound like you used to." That made her look down. "That was a long time ago. Feels like yesterday," Eli said. His voice was hoarse, but the edge of warmth was still there. "You still keep that silver hairpin I gave you?" Sarah's hand brushed her collar. The pin, tarnished and bent, still rested there. "Couldn't bring myself to throw it away." Eli's smile widened just a little. "Guess some things survived the fire after all." Outside, the sound of boots approached. Deputy Lyle stepped in, hat in hand, looking older than he did a day ago. "Turner," he said, clearing his throat. "Sheriff's back from Carson Wells, wants to talk to you." Eli sat up with a grimace. "If he's here to lock me up, tell him to bring a bigger cell." Lyle shook his head. "Ain't like that. Man's asking questions. Wants to set the record straight about Miller's Crossing." Eli's eyes darkened at the name. 10 years too late. Still, he pushed himself up. Sarah helped him to his feet, steadying him when his knees buckled. They stepped out into the open, the whole town watching. Folks who once looked at Eli with suspicion now looked at him with something else. Respect, maybe, or shame for ever doubting. The sheriff, a tall man with silver in his beard, met Eli halfway down the street. "Heard you took a bullet yesterday," he said. "Wasn't the first time," Eli replied. The sheriff nodded. "We found something in Cal's house. Letters. Documents about Miller's ranch signed over to his name. Looks like he planned that fire to claim it after all." Eli's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The truth was bitter even when it came clean. "We're clearing your name," the sheriff continued. "Wanted you to hear it first." Eli gave a slow nod. "Appreciate it." The sheriff looked toward Sarah, his tone softening. "You'll both want to leave town soon. Red Hollow's got long memories, and not all of them kind." He tipped his hat and walked off, leaving them standing under the burning light. Sarah turned to Eli. "You could start over somewhere new, maybe up north. There's still land out there no one's claimed." Eli looked past her, out toward the edge of town where the desert stretched forever. "You coming with me?" She hesitated, her eyes filled with things she couldn't say. "I don't know who I am anymore," she whispered. "I spent 10 years living a lie. Maybe I need to find out what's left." Eli's gaze softened. "Then find it. Don't let what we were drag you down." The wind caught her hair, brushing it across her face. "And you?" she asked. Eli looked toward the stables where his horse waited. "Guess I'll keep riding. West, maybe. Or whatever the sun sets next." A small broken smile touched her lips. "You always did like chasing the sunset." He tipped his hat. "Someone's got to." That afternoon, the townsfolk buried Cal Briggs on the hill above Red Hollow. No preacher, no fancy words. Just a wooden cross and the sound of wind whispering through dry grass. A few men muttered that he'd done some good once before greed took his heart. Others just stared, remembering how fear used to walk in his shadow. Sarah stood at the edge of the grave, her hands clasped tight. Eli stood beside her, hat in hand, the bandage around his ribs hidden beneath his coat. "I wanted to hate him," she said quietly. "But when I pulled that trigger, all I felt was tired." Eli nodded. "That's how it goes. Hate don't last forever. Just eats you hollow till there's nothing left." She glanced at him. "You sound like a preacher," he chuckled softly. "Nah, just a man who's buried too many ghosts." The two of them stood there until the sun slipped behind the hills, painting the sky in fire and blood. Then Sarah turned toward town. You leaving tonight? Eli looked out across the desert. At first light, then this is goodbye. He met her eyes, tired, soft, still beautiful despite the years and the pain. No, he said. Just the end of one road. She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the faint trace of lavender she used to wear. Her voice trembled when she said, "Be safe, Eli." He smiled, just a hint. "Always am." She shook her head, a tear sliding down her cheek. That was never true. And then she turned and walked away, her figure small against the fading light, her shadow stretching long behind her. Eli watched her until she disappeared into the glow of lanterns. By dawn, the town was quiet again. Eli saddled his horse outside the old livery, the same way he had 100 mornings before. The air was cool, the kind of stillness that only came after storms. As he swung into the saddle, Lyle appeared from the corner, holding a small wrapped bundle. "Sarah said to give you this," he said. Eli opened it. Inside was the silver hairpin, cleaned and shining again. Beneath it, a note for the road ahead. Eli stared at it a long moment, then smiled and tucked it inside his coat. He looked down the main street of Red Hollow one last time. The broken signs, the cracked boardwalks, the place where blood had dried into the dust. The people were stirring now, sweeping porches, feeding horses, pretending life was normal again. "Funny thing about towns," he murmured. "They survive anything." He touched the brim of his hat and nudged his horse forward. The animal's hooves beat a steady rhythm across the dirt. The wind picked up behind him, carrying with it the faint scent of sage and gunpowder, the last reminders of what had been. As the sun climbed over the horizon, Eli Turner rode west, his shadow long and thin across the sand. He didn't look back. Red Hollow faded into the haze behind him, and the desert opened wide like a promise. The past was gone. Burned and buried, all that was left was the road, the sun, and the whisper of redemption carried on the wind. Redemption carried on the wind.